House believes that political representatives should deliberately seek to achieve the best political outcomes for their own local community or constituency, even at the expense of national interest. For understanding the expense of national interesting why the political representative should do that. Political representatives' first and foremost duty of the local arena is to ensure the best outcomes of their own community, and they are assigned to do that from the national or the all over the country's political party. Whenever they are fulfilling their responsibility in that moment, they need to think that they should do their fulfill their responsibility in the best possible way for their local communities, and in the sense of this responsibility fulfillment idea, we need to understand that they should think or consider their own community at first. Now, understand this whenever we are telling you that there may be some cases where this political representative should deliberately seek to achieve the best political outcomes for their own local community or constituency, even at the expense of national interest. That means sometimes maybe the situation arises in such a way that the national interest may be foregone by those political representatives of local area. But understand is in that moment what actually happens. We believe that the proper developments of the activities need to be focused first, because whenever this types of situation arises, their responsibility will not be fulfilled if they considers about the national interest first in that area. Their responsibility is not to think about from the ground of the national political leaders. Rather, their idea is to think about the best outcomes in their local area. Now, understand what happens in those situations. In those situations, the pupils living into that local community, what would be the mindset of those people? These pupils have chosen those political representative into their community by a proper democratic elections, or maybe they have chosen maybe they have chosen and elected that particular political leader. In that moment, what the situation, whenever they are saying that their own interest has been foregone, their own interest has been sacrificed for the sake of something else, maybe lots of people will not understand the national interest from the very first moment. The immediate response, the immediate sacrificing of developmental activities or development of their community will also definitely be seen by those local areas people. In that moment, they will think that okay, we have chosen this political leader, and this political leader is not caring about us enough to be developed or to ensure our best outcomes in different ways. Understand this, ladies and gentlemen, in that moment, what will they happen? They will lose the trust on those political leaders at the very first of all. We believe this trust is very essential not only for these local political leaders, rather, this trust is also very crucial for the national political leader. Those are currently ruling the country. In that moment, we believe these types of things. So whenever the next election will come, these local communities people will not judge those individual national political leader political representative of their own community. Rather, they will judge whole the political leader. For example, in India, they will judge the BJP or the Congress on the best of what the best outcomes they have faced in their local arena or by the local representative. In that way, we believe this will be also very problematic in the sense of the greater aspects of the political leader. We believe that should be also thought from the very beginning of a tenure. We believe at the secondary level, whenever this trust is being forgone, what will be happening? In another perspective, whenever we believe that not only that our trust of a political leader gone, and suddenly we try to change our decision. Not only the situation is always that. Not always the situation is like that. The situation is something else, that the pupils try to, the people seeing that they are being sacrificed by those political leaders. In that moment, they're less likely to be loyal to that political peoples or the elected government. Second of all, there will be less try to be cooperative with that political with the political leaders or the or representatives. in cases of contributing or being productive in their own sector. We believe these kinds of things simply harms from the very first time the local interest. In that moment, the local people are not being loyal to that political representative and not cooperative to that political representative. This is harming the economy of the productivity of that individual, and this harming the productivity of individuals or cooperations of the with the local political representative. This also actually harms in the greater aspects of the national perspective. We believe from these types of losses, we think that the immediate developmental activities should be prioritized more, and for the sake of the responsibility fulfillment of the political representative. This political representative should not think about national interest when there is a greater loss or not getting any political outcomes of their own community. Because understand that they need to think or they need to prioritize what their responsibility is at the first of all. Now, opposition may come up with the idea that these political representatives are actually standing in that positions on the basis of or on the helping of those those political group who are actually thinking about the national interest. And this we believe this is very crucial to this debate. But understand this, these national political groups have chosen or have chosen this political representative in a particular area on the basis of ensuring the developmental activities or the fulfillment of their responsibility at the very first. We believe even if they are thinking about that these political representatives should favor those types of activities of national interest. We believe this is very problematic on the basis of the developmental activities would be created through some bureaucratic problems or the complexity. Every time these political representatives would be think about their own outcomes, that okay, is this actually harming the national interest or not? Is this actually harming being cooperative with the national interest or not? Now, time out. Every time they are thinking about this, we believe this is at the very first fall problematic to their own community and greater the national interest. Thank you.
We believe those people are being elected, those politicians are being elected by the local people. We believe that is the reason those politicians should work for the people of that particular region. But the question is why those politicians should work for the people of that particular region at the expense of the national interest at the end of the day. Why? And we don't get any significant reason from the side government that why we have to sacrifice the interest of the nation in case of to get the benefit of those local people, because in the cases that is not mutually exclusive, the national interest and the local interest is not mutually exclusive. They are giving their 100% to that particular locality at the end of the day and fulfilling their responsibility. We want some engagement from the government side. Two things in my speech. Firstly, where those people belongs basically, and why is that important? And secondly, how the development activities cannot run under their side of this house. Firstly, how the but before that, rebuttal first. Firstly, they told us that trust on the leaders are going to be removed from the local level people, and for that particular reason, they will be less likely to be re-elected in future. If you are a good politician, why you will want to be re-elected by sacrificing the national interest at the end of the day. You may have some personal interest to be re-elected in future, but we don't believe there is enough reason for that particular things to be re-elected by sacrificing the benefit of a particular country, which means even if trusts are going to be removed, still you are as an individual politician is fulfilling your duty, not harming your nation at the end of the day. We believe in that point of moment, being re-elected is not the main thing, rather than the benefit of a particular nation is the main thing. Secondly, they believe that the support of the people will be removed whenever you are not helping or you are not working for those people. Number one, you are working for those people in the cases where the national interest is not going against the local interest, and the very few cases where you have to go against the local people, in those cases your support is going to be removed, which means in majority of the cases you are getting support of the people, and very few cases where the national interest and local interest are mutually exclusive, you are not getting the support of the people. We don't believe that is a significant harms that reduces the support of the people to that particular politician fully. Secondly, even if in the worst case scenario the support of the people are removed, what happens under their word? In that point of moment, they are harming the whole nation's people by saving their own few people. Understand the fact, in East Bengal, maybe there are many people, but compared to the whole Indian region, there is a very few amount of people. The moment the whole India as a nation is less likely to support you because you are not supporting them, in that point of moment you will face a huge problem in case of resource allocation by other people, in case of being cooperative from other people. You are not going to get help from the whole nation at the end of the day, which means support of the nation is going to be removed as a politician from you. We believe that is much more harmful because the whole nation is against your interest. But if a few people in your local region don't support you, we don't believe there is a huge amount of harm in case of development at the end of the day, because still you are getting the resources from the central authority of a particular nation, and that is why you are going to be able to do the development activities. Now, why you as a person belongs more to you should have a much more should belongs to a particular nation much more compared to belong in a particular region. Understand the fact an individual have some, as a politician or an individual have some basic rights and basic needs to be fulfilled, and who is the authority that fulfills those particular needs? We believe the nation is that particular authority, or the whole nation is that particular entity that gives you those particular rights. For example, if you live in a particular region, they have scarce of resources. They may have scarce of resources or monetary problems, so that they cannot support you and give you back to be a good citizen. But whole nation is giving their own resources as a resources, sacrificing their resources for you and give you the opportunity to have those particular things. They give you the legislative support, they give you the jurisdiction support, they give you the basic rights and protect those rights that a particular local region don't basically give a particular individual, which means you are more likely to get the benefit from the nation, not rather than from the local areas, which means you belongs more to a particular nation and less belongs to a particular region at the end of the day. And that is why we believe whenever you are belonging a particular nation which gives you all the benefits and right and protecting your rights, we believe you should think about and prioritize the interest of that particular nation first, and later you can think about that particular region at the end of the day. Secondly, how development is going to be harmful. First of all, understand the fact I have already proved in my speech that development in a particular region cannot be independent. It depends on other areas also, because you have to get resources from other areas. Now, if you harm other regions, in that point of moment, in future, they are less likely to give you the resources at the end of the day in the long term, which means you can be less likely to be able to run the development activities in that particular region. For example, if a particular state don't willing to give you the water of a particular river because you didn't help them previously, in that point of moment, you farmers are going to be harmed at the end of the day. Those types of harms can happen because the development is not a short term or one time term, rather than in in long term you will suffer at the end, suffer hugely because you didn't help some people. Secondly, in case of imbalance of the development of a particular region, understand the fact there are many politicians who are very much influential in a particular country. Whenever the resource allocation comes, and if the politician thinks about their own region only and less likely to think about the nation, in that point of moment those politicians are very much influential, they will more likely to get most of the and majority of the resources into their region. They will less likely to reallocate the resource to the other regions where the necessity of the resources is very much high, where the people are suffering more, and where the development should be done immediately and urgently. Which means a few areas will get the majority of the resources, other areas will not get the majority, will not get enough amount of resources at the end of the day. We believe that is harmful for a particular country because it creates imbalance between the region in case of development at the end of the day. Proud to oppose.
The situations of trade-off of resources that oppositions have identified is not the ideal way that actually the trade-off happens. Understand this, ladies and gentlemen. Whenever whenever one particular community has lack of resources, it is obvious or it is seen that the other party or the national from the national party the resources are being set. The national party or the national political party is sending the resources through your local political representative. That means your local representatives should have that much of strong positions to pursue or to convince those political leaders or the national sectors to send your resources to your community. In that moment, this scenario is something that okay, my region is giving you resources. If your region is giving me resources, the scenario is not like that, the opposition telling me. Now understand this, ladies and gentlemen. Whenever, even if we are considering the fact that okay, whenever resources are minimum, the resources are being allocated through your political parties or the representatives. But understand this, when your own resources are not being utilized by your political parties or your own communities, in that moment the others party will less likely to help you by providing resources. For example, when we see that the West Bengal in India have the resources of waters in the rivers and they can utilize it to their agricultural benefit of the economy, agricultural economy, in that moment, whenever they are not utilizing for the sake of benefit of national interest, what is not being seen directly or immediately, or the outcomes is not being ensured enough, but the loss is direct or loss is very visible to the peoples of the whole country along with your local community. In that moment, we believe, ladies and gentlemen, the helps will less likely to be come from the other sectors. In that moment, ladies and gentlemen, we tell you this happens tell you the situations that happens into that arena is quite complex than the oppositions actually think. They think that okay, ladies and gentlemen, in futures the other areas peoples will not help you, the resources will not be provided to you. We believe this is not the case. Your resources need to be utilized by you first. And we believe this is the case should be. Now understand, ladies and gentlemen, whenever they're telling us about a good political leader or a people should think about the nation because they belongs more to the nations and less to the community. We believe this is a wrong assumption because understand this. Unless or until we develop in Chittagong, we cannot contribute or claim the developmental activities of Bangladesh. Because understand this is how the development activities actually take place in a certain arena. Whenever the West Bengal's peoples or the other communities peoples are not establishing themselves from the very root level or developmental activities or the best outcomes is not being happening into their own community, the immediate benefit will not be gone from the other sector because the immediate benefit is something that is why we demand road constructions or the bridge construction in our local area, not into the other sectors for the sake of national interest. For example, the pupils of Chittagong will not claim, will less likely to claim Padma Bridge in another area of Bangladesh rather the developmental activities their own area because this is very more visible to them, these are more beneficial to them and more understandable to them. We believe that is how the that the decentralization of development actually happens. In that moment, ladies and gentlemen, in also country like India, the decentralization of development happens, and that is why the political representatives are being set to think about the developmental activities into their arena. That is why the representatives, or the local political representatives, have more responsibility to think about to utilize their own resources for the best outcomes of their community. Because understand this, if we think about the national interest, the aggregate benefit will come when the all over the province will think about own benefit first and then accumulate it in the national interest. For example, ladies and gentlemen, understand this, when political representatives in not consider in their world considering their own area's outcome first by for the sake of the national interest, in that moment the benefits of national interest would likely to be come and trigger would likely to be reached to that arena where this community have already sacrificed their own outcomes. Now understand this, ladies and gentlemen. Whenever they have sacrificed their best outcome, and it is very much clear to the people of that local community, and they have seen that okay, we are actually sacrificing this, but the benefit that they are talking about, the national interest, would less likely to be or lately reach to that community. And when it will reach, they don't know. Most of the time, these people won't understand the benefits that their opposition side is talking about. That means the aggregate benefit they're talking about was likely to be visible or reach to the every sectoral people. Now understand this, ladies and gentlemen, the weight of the weight of the developmental activities that we are comparing between these two. We believe the weight of the developmental activities of the local community is higher than the national interest, because this is immediate, this is very much inclusive to the pupils, and this is very much related to the pupils of that arena's political leaders and its people. We believe this development is sustainable because this development is sustainable in local area, because it actually very much related to these people, because they are utilizing their own resources, not getting resources from another area in later period of time by sacrificing their own resources. We believe this is very much problematic in their world. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are telling about that the total aggregate benefit is absent in opposition's world, but in our world, we are telling you, without the interruptions of the local representatives for doing their best to achieve the best outcomes of the total aggregate benefit, would be able to minimize the loss of sacrificing national interest. Because maybe now we are sacrificing the national interest, but we are ensuring that every local community is ensuring the developmental activities. That means whenever the developmental activities is happening in every sector, that means in total the development is ensuring the national interest. We are very proud to progress. Thank
Before going to material some characterization, firstly, if the development is not something like a particular region have all the resources and materials for their own development, rather than they have to get some resources from other people, as well as they have to utilize their own resources. And the claim from the government side that whenever all the particular regions are working separately for their own interest, that development is going to happen. But we don't believe that is going to happen, because all those regions don't have all the resources. For example, some areas may have the minerals that is needed for the industrial development, and some region may have unique environmental characteristics that gives the agricultural advantage to that particular region. You have to depend on other region for the development of a particular thing, which means if you don't help other and tell them that I will only work for me, in that point of moment they will not give you the resources that you need for your own region's development, which means ultimately development is not going to happen under their word. Now, firstly, recognize that the situation of this particular debate is very much rare in most of the cases, because in most of the cases the regional interest and the national interest are very much are mutually exclusive. That happens in very rare cases. But why we still believe that those people will more likely to remember the cases whenever you are not giving them the resources to other people, whenever you are not helping other areas, because the nature of the human being is that they will less likely to remember the good thing that happens to them and more likely to remember the bad things that happens to them. If you as East Bengal help give help other region of India thousands of times, people are less likely to remember. But if you a single time harms the whole nation for your own interest, they will remember that because of the human nature that exists within them. Which means at the end of the day, they will less like, because of that particular assumption for your region, those people will less likely to help you. Now, secondly, they believe that decentralization happens under their world because all the politicians are thinking about them. But I think I have already give enough amount of analysis in my first speech that how the strong politicians who have good political influence over a particular country in case of resource allocation are most likely to get all the resources into their own region and not are less likely to give the resources to other region where those politicians have less influence in the national level and resource allocation. And that is the reason resource allocation are less likely to happen. And if those particular things happen, for example, a particular region is very much developed and other region are not developed, the thing is that the people will rush to that developed area at the end of the day to get the employment, to get the facilities that developed area provides them, which means the area which is currently developed or which is getting developed compared to the other region at the end of the day being harmed by the flow of those huge by overpopulation, because all the peoples are rushing to that areas at the end of the day. We believe that is harmful for the development of that particular city, which is getting more resources at the end of it. Secondly, which side of the now, where the development activities happens or how the development activities run in a particular country, how the government allocate the resources. Government allocate the resources depending on the significance of the necessity of a particular region. If a particular region needs or suffers hugely, or if they have necessity more, the government gives them more resources. For example, a minority groups are being suffering at the end of the day. What government does is to give more resources to them and less resources to other things. Everyone have to sacrifice for everyone, and that is how the most vulnerable stakeholder in a particular country can have the resources or can have the development. Under their world, whenever every single politician are thinking about only their own region, they are less likely to think about the most vulnerable stakeholder of a particular country who are suffering more, where the development activities should be done more. We believe in that point of moment, the development they are talking about is going to be less effective because those are not reaching to the most vulnerable people in a particular country. Thirdly, they believe that they, thirdly, uh, they've told us that they told us many things about that how people's trust will remove, how the development will not visible to in the areas. But understand the fact I have already told that how the general level people, local level people don't have those types of problem because in most of the cases they are getting the benefit from their own politician. More importantly, the visible development or the sugarcoating development they are talking about, why that particular development is so much necessary to be visualized to the people, we didn't basically got at the end of the day. More importantly, we don't get the reason why those people will not utilize their own resources in their own areas if a political leader try to prioritize the national interest over the local interest. Any PY. Okay, no PY. What we have, what is opposition stance? We believe a particular individual gets all their basic rights, and all their basic rights has been fulfilled, and most of their basic rights has been fulfilled and protect their basic rights. For example, right to have the expression, the right to have political expression, the protection from the jurisdiction, all those happens from the national level. You have freedom from the national level, you are enjoying sovereignty because a nation exists. All those things is not being provided by those regional level. You are more a citizen of a particular nation, and then you are a citizen of a particular region, and that is why those people should not prioritize their own region whenever the resource allocation and development activities are mutually exclusive. Rather than they should prioritize their own nation. We believe that development can happen. Development are not independent rather than dependent on different regions. If you are as an independent area try to do all the development activities by your own self, you cannot develop in the long term. Proud to oppose. হ্যাঁ, আর আমরা থেকে কত কিছু আসবে এখন। এই, হ্যাঁ, কেমন বলছিল? ওইটা না।
Context. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. From the lower house, we believe that the ground or the context of these motions should be clarified more rather than the upper house has been told. Why basically we are telling deliberately seek to achieve the best political outcomes even at the expense of the national interest. We believe that, ladies and gentlemen, this debate is all about the in a state or the inequality or the uneven development is exist. Because when the equal development is available, that time there is no questions of the seeking the best political outcome in any even at the expense of the national interest, ladies and gentlemen. We believe it's happened when the peoples of the state or the area of any nationality is not being developed equally, ladies and gentlemen. That time the unequal developed state should come. Yes, they need to raise their voices in the national parliament. Yes, the best political outcome is needed in our state also, ladies and gentlemen. So we believe that, ladies and gentlemen, from in our side, we are talking about those state should be prioritized again because there it's important to expand the national interest because this state are undermined or undermined in terms of making the policy, ladies and gentlemen. Because the different we see the revengeful political policy making exist in these are the developing state, ladies and gentlemen. We see the undermining the state in terms of only for the elected representative was from the opposition party, ladies and gentlemen. We see this are the state is important. This state was lost in making the equal development where the mainstream or the developed state was developed by the prioritizing by the in terms of making the national interest, ladies and gentlemen. When this state was lost, no state was raised their voice, ladies and gentlemen, to happen the equal development. So in that case, ladies and gentlemen, it is important to expand the national interest to develop to make an equilibrium point, giving the additional resources or the giving the priority in terms of making the development policy to that unequal developed state, ladies and gentlemen. So we believe, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking the more debatable issue in this house, ladies and gentlemen, and also what basically we also talking, ladies and gentlemen. We talking when this state, ladies and gentlemen, this estate resources was not utilized. This estate was not being talked in the parliament, ladies and gentlemen, because we believe the scarce resources is happen. But in this point of moment, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that this state should need to seek the most political outcomes in the parliament, because they are not they are underprivileged in terms of making the policy, or they are allocating the development budget in those states, ladies and gentlemen. So we believe it's justified to to expand the national interest to develop this state, which was lost in before in terms of making the policy in those particular states. And also, ladies and gentlemen, the idea from the very opposition side is talked about the if this state is being prioritized or seek to get the most political outcome, and the entire national state will go against this particular state, ladies and gentlemen. But it's not happened, because those states who are benefited, ladies and gentlemen, they cannot do it. Even it's not justified to do it to that individual state who are not get benefited from the national policy, ladies and gentlemen. We believe the idea it's totally antagonistic. The idea from the opposition, it's all about that the richer state will be the richer, and there is no place for that unequal state, for that underprivileged state which was not get benefits or the rights from the international state. So we believe it's justified to being trade off by giving the and seeking the best outcomes from this state. Even, ladies and gentlemen, we are telling that why this is important for the equal development. We believe, ladies and gentlemen, the resource utilization, even the resources exist in that society, but it was not utilized by the only because of the opposition sentiment, or the opposition's revenge, or the opposition representative was elected before in that area, ladies and gentlemen. That's why the central government was rejected or the undermined that specific nation of the specific state, ladies and gentlemen. And also, let's say, even the resources or the it's not available in that specific state, but government responsibility was to create the opportunities or the potentialities to make the development happen in that individual state. But it was not, it was failed. That's why the question motion raises to seek the best political outcome of that specific or of those underprivileged states, ladies and gentlemen. So in our world, ladies and gentlemen, we are telling that the equal development of those state which was not get the equal benefits compared to the developed state in a nation, ladies and gentlemen. In our world, ladies and gentlemen, we are telling the priority metrics should be more favored of those states which even at the expense of the national interest, because we have told you the justification, because those other states who are now benefited, but they lost this underprivileged state, ladies and gentlemen, in before. So in our work, ladies and gentlemen, we are telling how the resources will be much more maximized, because this state and they got the opportunity to seek the best political outcome there. Definitely they need to show the opportunity exists in their own state, ladies and gentlemen. So in that moment, ladies and gentlemen, they will also force to create the opportunity to make the development process more speedy, ladies and gentlemen. Your opinion.
Sir, as a underdeveloped area, you cannot be developed without the help of the developed areas. So if you sacrifice the incentive of those, the benefit of those developed areas, why the hell they will help you?
Because those other states they will help, because they achieved the benefited in before by sacrificing the benefits, or the sacrificing the opportunity, or the sacrificing the maximization of the resources of that individual underprivileged state, ladies and gentlemen. So it's their own duty, own responsibility to make the equal development of that individual state, because their resources was not utilized only because of the prioritizing those developed state, ladies and gentlemen. So in our world, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking more debatable ground, because that's not being found from the very opposition side. And also, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about they're talking about, ladies and gentlemen, the antagonists or the more reverse actions will come from the entire nations. So that was also being rebutted. And the idea of the creating imbalance, it exists in their house, not in our house, because in our house we are giving the priority or the creating the opportunity of the underprivileged state to make the equal development. We are very proud to. दो दिन है ये तुम्हारा डिबेट के लिए
একদিনে কি ইয়ে বেড়ে বেলে ব্যবহার করে না দেখলো
বাকি বাকি জায়গাগুলো অফিস করি
আগে তো করে বলছো ওদেরকে করে বলছো ওদেরকে তো অপরচুনিটি দিতে হবে ঠিক করার জন্য ডিবেটটা তো ওটা না সবাই যদি সমান পায় তাহলে
হ্যাঁ আমি বলছি
এই অঙ্কন শুরু করতে
অঙ্কন কিভাবে
We believe the most vulnerable stakeholder we got, the political party, and also the people of their own country, and also the people of their own locality, of their representative, what we found from the also government side and also upper house. But when we are taking the case of the opening government, they are talking about the local people only choose the improve their own self because local people don't think about their outcome. But we believe when we are taking about the local communities improvement or local community development, that doesn't cost any way those expenses for the national any type of national interest expenses. And even if we take the case of the closing government, they are trying to say there will be a vulnerable situation, there is a vulnerable region in a state, and we are taking the case of it, we are trying to develop it by being centric to those region. Why it is not happening in their house? Because where there is a when this is a vulnerable state, because there is a deprived or there is a deprived, they are deprived or lack of the resources. If that time they are trying to do their political representative is trying to deliberately look over their own locality, it seems that when they are trying to deliberately look over only their own locality, they are expensing their national interest, and that time the government will think that the government who is more thinking about the more largely the national interest, that the political representative is harming because of their own locality, and that then the government will not try to allocate the resources to those vulnerable region, and that's why the vulnerable regions resource allocation problem will happen again, and resource allocation problem will happen again, and the government will not try to allocate the resources, and also the vulnerable state will also being the vulnerable state. And why from our state, from our position of the closing opposition, we are going to clarify why it is not, that should not be happen. Firstly, because there will be some ideological competition, and secondly there will be regional clash, and also there will be some re-election type mentality to the political representatives, and also some kind of corruption. Firstly, when regional clash will happen, see this, when there is every region's representative is trying to do their own development, and that time when there is a states who have the scarcity of resources, and when there is a scarcity of resources, then the government may try to allocate the resources equally of the state. But when the government cannot allocate the resources equally, because when the regions political representative try to do their own development, and that time they are expensing their national interest, and that time they are becoming so much region centric, those political representative, and every region will be in a competition, and some bad competition between the resource allocation, and that is regional people's clash. I mean the hatred towards the one, and hatred towards the other regions people will be increased, and own people's development will be also harmed, because the other regions is not like to be cooperative, because they know that you are harming the whole national interest, because you are trying to develop your own regional development, and that's why we think that regional clash will happen. And why this regional clash is more significant in our house, because this regional clash will harm their own regions development, and also that will harm our national and also the national expenses. Nothing is getting nothing is getting by the local political representative. They are intending to get the local benefit. And what is the ideological competition? I mean, people in the certain region are being taken care by the political representative. Their ideological clash between the country's government is existing. See, if we take about the Indian government and also the West Bengal's government, there is some ideological clash between them, because the West Bengal government some kind of trying to do the development of their own region, and also the country's government, they are not trying to do that over the own countries, over the whole country's national interest. But the government and there is some ideological clash between them, because the West Bengal's government, they are trying to allocate the resources, or develop the people of their own region, so that he can get elected next time. But he is not thinking about the national interest, because there is some kind of mentality that I should be re-elected again in the few further board or further election. And that type of mentality is harming their own region, because the government, then there is an ideological clash, because the Indian government is Indian government has a different ideology, and West Bengal government is holding a different ideology. And that type of ideological clash between them, when the ideological clash is being happened, when the West Bengal's government is trying to do the only development towards their own locality. And that time the problem is happening in this situation is that their own area is not getting the resource allocation properly from the government, and also the chances of the West Bengal government is very much vulnerable in case of they can be abducted by the government from their position, and the corruption will happen. And also there will be some corruption in this situation. When the political representative try to do only the development for the local area, because why they will try to do, because they will know that if we do that, like a local area development, I will be re-elected. And anyway, no matter how, I don't care about the national interest, I only care about our local development. And that's why they will try to get the resources anyhow, no matter what it costs to the no matter how it costs to the state. And that's why that is harming the whole state. And that is some kind of, they will try to lobby the government to give more extra resources. They will corrupt the system to get the more benefit from the system, to get the more chances to their region, and also being re-elected again. And that's why, from our position, I think we should oppose this motion.
সামনে একটা মোবাইল আছে সামনে টাকা বেড়া ভাই
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. From the lower house, we cleared our stand why basically this debate is arising. We talked that when the uneven development is happened that time, the other state who are underprivileged, they call and they seek the most or the best political outcome in the power level, ladies and gentlemen. So, but this case is totally unrecognized or the unrebutted by the opposition, ladies and gentlemen, at the very first place. And the very idea from the both opposition side, it's like that and the clashes in this house is that the vulnerable state development is hampered or not, and the another clash is that the war between the individual state and the national and the entire the other national state, ladies and gentlemen. Now let's see, ladies and gentlemen, why the oppositions take the debates within this major clashes in this house. Ladies and gentlemen, they talk why this vulnerable state development is hampered. Only because of the other nationalities will be outraged because they are seeking the best output, ladies and gentlemen. But we told you why this is justified to give them the additional benefit or the have the right or the responsibility to seek the best output for their own peoples by this political representative. Because we have already told this uh, the political representative then seek the best political outcome when they are underprivileged. Their development was not equal compared to the other national state was being developed, ladies and gentlemen. So at that time, the unused resources, ladies and gentlemen, was happened for the reason like that for the opposite representative was elected from that specific state, ladies and gentlemen. And also the no strong political leader was stopped the problems of that individual state in the parliament and not solved in before, ladies and gentlemen, not got the priority in case of the allocating the budget of the entire state, ladies and gentlemen. So even if, ladies and gentlemen, we agreed that in the worst case scenario that there is no opportunity to develop of that individual state, but it was the government or the entire state responsibility to bring that underdeveloped state in the equilibrium point, ladies and gentlemen. But we are talking about that, ladies and gentlemen, this equilibrium development or the bringing that state, giving the best possible political outcome, ladies and gentlemen. We are bringing this underprivileged state in the equilibrium point, giving the additional resources, ladies and gentlemen. And the idea, ladies and gentlemen, come from the both the houses. This is the individual versus the national, and the individual is seeking the best, ladies and gentlemen, best political outcome, and that time there is a regional clashes or the and outrages happen against other states, ladies and gentlemen. We believe it's not happened. Why the regional clashes is happen? When we see the Dhaka, the people of Dhaka are the getting the most better out life standard, the better outer standard compared to the North Bengal people. That time the North Bengal people are outraged. Not the Dhaka people are outraged to create a clash. Ladies and gentlemen, with the North Bengal people, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to understand the clashes will not happen. The people from the Dhaka will not come to outrage. Rather, the people from the North Bengal will come to create the outrage within themselves, ladies and gentlemen. So we believe that we are thinking about, ladies and gentlemen, this at the stage or the representative from the North Bengal will come and will come in, will talk about their problems in your parliament, ladies and gentlemen. They will got the opportunity how their unused resources was not maximized or they utilized by the international interest, ladies and gentlemen. And we also give you the justifications why it's justified to seek the best for political outcomes in the parliament by this underprivileged state. Because they are lost, ladies and gentlemen. But the other state was benefited in terms of from the national interest, ladies and gentlemen. So we believe that, ladies and gentlemen, this is justified even to make a lobby to make the equal development, ladies and gentlemen. So in our world, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about the reality of the society from the closing of the proposition. So we believe that we are talking about the equilibrium development of the state. And also, let's say we talk about how the resource of the underprivileged state will come to the maximizations process by the national leaders, and also and these people will be got the same benefit is getting the other rich state in your country. So we believe it's justified even at the national interest because these people are lost in before and now they are getting the benefits and now they are getting the benefits as level as the other region state.
But do you encourage corruption to develop your local community?
It's not all about corruption. We are talking. It's the lobbying. Let's say the lobbying system. When you were the reasoning was that from the closing opposition, it was that creating the lobbying and it will make a corruption. But we are handling your reasoning that the lobbying is justified in that state even at the expense of national interest because this state was undermined, was underprivileged from your national leaders, ladies and gentlemen, in before. So we believe it justified to have to expense the national interest to make equal development of the every single state in your own nationality. We are very proud to propose the motion. Here.
Mr. Speaker, when the government sides from the lower house talk about the unequal development states, they didn't show how the actual utilization of resources will be happened in their scenario. Mr. Speaker, what is the problem? Still, a independent countries there is some unequal states, unequal or underdeveloped state. It means that there are two reasons may be happen. First of all, those types of states don't get the allocation of resources because of the opponent ideological political party, or the second one is that maybe the government still don't find any interest to develop those types of area because of the less allocation, because of the less resources of those. So when this thinking happened, how they ensure that the equal development can be ensured under their world, Mr. Speaker. Still, there is when this scenario happens, still there is a possibility of the underdeveloped because here the government don't find any interest to go there and to invest. So when they talk about that, this types of equal development, there must be the probability of the corruptions and other uh, uh, problem will be happen in their scenario. So it's the problematic case from their sides. Now to our sides, what do you talk? They talk the lower house talk about the ideological problem, the corruption problem, and the other problems, Mr. Speaker. First of all, the basic uh, uh, when the case come up from the government sides, that some problems they talk about that there will be ensured the prime minister talk about that the loss of trust and the future election, Mr. Speaker. When they are only the centric thinking, they they totally lose the main motto of the political leader. Is that when you are doing any politics, you have to do for the betterment of your country. Do have to a betterment of your country when you have to consider the national interest. But Mr. Speaker, the prime minister from this side totally denied the national interest, rather than they always talk about the century development. But how they claim that they will ensure the decentralizations from their side. But Mr. Speaker, decentralization can be ensured from their side because they talk about always that only they need they only need the local communities development, not the whole country's interest. But under our world, we ensure that when a political party must be there, they must have the motto of the interest of the national interest. So when you have already the national interest, you also try to push up the state interest. So only the decentralization development can be ensured from our world, not the government world. Only they can create the centric mentality of the centric development from their side, because they only focus on the own development of their states. Is the problem, Mr. Speaker? They also talk about that the loss of trust, Mr. Speaker. Loss of trust cannot be happen all the time because the a country a politician elected, it does not mean that they only concentrate on the work, because only when they are working on the own interest or working for the local people, they must not reach they cannot maybe they cannot be reach the top position, because whenever whenever the government one political persons only work for their own country, the government shows that the government already seen that they are only working for their own interests. So a great corruptions a probability of get corruption can be under their wall. But Mr. Speaker, when the government already seen that this my political leader already work for the national interest must be there, then the government can be satisfied from their work and they can easily enrich the top positions from their political background. Must these types of mentality should be considered from our world, not their world. So the personal positions can also be the probability personal losing the probability can be happen from their side. But Mr. Speaker, now to the comparison, why a government said why we took we should take away. First of all, we talk about that the corruption problem, which is the most which can be the most severe under their world, because there must when a political leader already lose his motto of doing the national interest rather than they only doing work for their own interest. They anyhow didn't show the how it will ensure. That's why there can be must be there can be the probability of the corruptions from their side, because only the selfishness of those political leaders can be happen from their side. Viewers.
How you are making an inclusive development by bringing those underprivileged the central.
Okay, Mrs. Speaker. Whenever underdeveloped, there's also the budget allocations from their from those types of region. So when there is a budget allocation from those resources, those underdeveloped country can be developed from those types of allocation of budgets. So they do not need any types of need don't need any types of local development from their side. Now come to the comparison to the government to our oppositions. To the government, they in the upper house and laws there is two types of cases come from. But under that there's the loopholes to the both sides. First of all, they talk about the centric thinking. Again, they talk about the unlikely, which may be create the proportion of corruptions, proportion of lobbying, and which can be create the illegal ideological sentimental problem from their side. But under our side, we can ensure the decentralization development. We can ensure the proper development from our country. That's why we are oppose this motion.
Save করছো?
Wait, wait.